There's a specific kind of confusion that hits differently than any other. It's not the confusion of a fight. It's not the confusion of a betrayal. It's the confusion of doing everything right and still watching someone slowly disappear. You were consistent, you showed up, you were honest. You didn't play games, you didn't go cold, you didn't act like you didn't care. You actually tried, maybe more than you'd tried with anyone before. And for a moment it felt like it was working. She was engaged, she was warm, she was present. Things felt like they were building towards something real. And then something shifted. Not dramatically, not in a way you could point to and say, that's where it went wrong. It was subtle. Replies got a little slower. The energy in conversations dropped slightly. Plans started getting vaguer. And that warm, genuine interest that was there at the beginning started to feel like it was cooling quietly, without explanation. So you did what most people do. You tried harder, you put in more effort, you were more attentive, more thoughtful, more present, because that's what made sense. If something is fading, you pour more energy into it. You fight for it, that's the logical response. But the harder you tried, the more distant things became. And eventually it was gone. She was gone, and you were left standing in the middle of everything you'd built, holding all this effort with nowhere to put it. And the question that follows you afterward is one of the most frustrating questions a person can carry. What did I do wrong? But here's the thing, that might not be the right question, because the answer isn't always that you did something wrong. Sometimes the answer is something much harder to accept. Sometimes you did everything right and it still didn't work, not because you failed, but because of something that had nothing to do with your effort at all. And that's what we're going to talk about today. To understand why this happens, you have to first understand something about how attraction works that most people never actually get taught. Most men are raised with a simple model of relationships. You meet someone, you show interest, you're consistent, kind, honest, and reliable. You invest your time and energy, and in return something real grows. That model makes sense, it feels fair, it feels like how things should work. But attraction doesn't follow the rules of fairness. Attraction isn't logical. It doesn't reward effort the way a job rewards hard work or a skill rewards practice. Attraction is emotional, and emotions don't respond to consistency the same way a contract does. Here's what actually happens. In the early stages of connecting with someone, there's a certain energy that exists naturally, a kind of tension, an uncertainty. Not knowing exactly where you stand, not knowing exactly how they feel, creates a psychological space that attraction lives in. That space is what makes the early stages feel exciting. It's what makes you think about someone when they're not around. It's what creates anticipation. Now, when a man does everything right, when he's consistent, warm, available, and clearly invested, he eliminates that space. He answers every question before it's asked. He removes every uncertainty. He fills every gap. And while that feels like the right thing to do, what it actually does is collapse the very tension that was generating the attraction in the first place. This is not about playing games. This is not about being cruel or withholding. This is about understanding something fundamental about human psychology. People are wired to pursue what they're not completely sure they have. The moment something feels fully secured, fully certain, fully within reach, the brain registers it differently, not as something valuable, as something settled. And settled doesn't feel exciting. Settled doesn't create that pull. Settled is comfortable, but comfort and attraction are not the same thing. And when the attraction fades, the interest follows. So she didn't lose interest because you were bad. She lost interest because the feeling that was driving her interest, that sense of not quite knowing, that slight uncertainty, that aliveness in the connection, got replaced by certainty. And certainty, as unfair as it sounds, can kill attraction before anything real even has a chance to build. But let's go deeper than that, because that explanation, while true, is only part of the picture. And if we stop there, it sounds like the solution is to just be less available, to be more distant, to manufacture mystery. And that's not what this is about. There's another layer to this that's rarely talked about, and it has to do with what happens inside a man when he decides he really likes someone. When most men find someone they genuinely connect with, someone who feels different, someone who seems to represent something they've been looking for, they shift into a mode that feels natural but is actually working against them. They start orienting their energy around her, not in an obsessive way, just in a quiet, consistent way. She becomes the thing they're most focused on. Their day gets better when she responds. their mood shifts based on where things stand. Their mind drifts to her when nothing's happening. And all of that is human, all of that is real, but what it does externally is it changes the dynamic completely. She can feel it, not always consciously, but she can sense when someone has made her the center of their world before the relationship has earned that position. She can feel the weight of it. And that weight, even if it comes from a genuine place, even if it comes from real feeling, creates pressure. A kind of invisible pressure that makes her feel like the stakes are already very high before anything has really been decided. And when the stakes feel high, when someone's emotional state seems to depend on how she responds, it stops feeling like a natural connection and starts feeling like a responsibility. And nobody wants to feel responsible for someone else's emotional well-being in the early stages of something. It's supposed to feel light, it's supposed to feel free. So she pulls back, not because she doesn't like you, not because you did something wrong, but because the energy became heavy before she was ready to carry it. And in pulling back, she creates the very distance that then makes things fall apart. And the cruel irony is that the more genuine your feelings were, the more likely this was to happen. Because the men who feel deeply are the ones who invest early. And investing early in today's environment often works against you. Now there's a third thing at work here that's even harder to accept. And this one isn't about psychology or attraction mechanics. This one is about timing and internal readiness. Sometimes she lost interest because she was never actually ready to build something real. Not because of you. Not because of what you did or didn't do, but because of where she was in her own life, in her own head, in her own process. People carry stories about themselves that they're not always aware of, patterns they repeat without knowing why, things they want in theory that they're not equipped to receive in practice. And sometimes a person can be genuinely drawn to someone, genuinely interested, genuinely feel something real, and still not be in a place where they can follow that feeling through. Maybe she's still attached to someone from her past. Maybe she's in a period of her life where she's prioritizing something else and hasn't fully admitted that to herself. Maybe she gets close to something real and then panics, not because of you, but because closeness itself feels dangerous to her based on things that happened long before you arrived. And the hardest part of this is that you can't see any of it from the outside. You meet the version of her that's present and engaged. You see the interest. You feel the connection. You have no access to the internal landscape that's going to determine whether any of this can actually grow. So you do everything right based on what's visible, and it still falls apart because of what wasn't visible, because of something that was happening inside her that had nothing to do with your effort, your character, or your value as a person. This is one of the most important things to understand. Not every situation that ends was something you could have saved. Not every person who showed interest was actually in a position to follow through on it. And holding yourself responsible for outcomes that were never in your control is one of the most damaging things you can do to yourself. Let's talk about something else that plays into this, the environment. We live in a time where someone's options are never truly closed. There is always another conversation happening somewhere. Always another person sending a message, showing interest, offering attention. And while that's always been true to some extent, the scale of it now is different. The access is different. The speed is different. What this creates is a kind of permanent comparison mode, not always conscious, not always intentional, but constant. Because when you know options exist, when you can feel them in your pocket at any moment, it changes how you evaluate what's in front of you. Something that felt special in isolation starts to feel less certain when you're aware of the noise around it. That connection that was building starts to get measured against possibilities that aren't even real yet. And in that comparison, even good things start to feel less definitive. So she wasn't necessarily choosing something better. She might not have been choosing anything at all. She might have just lost clarity on what she wanted because the environment she operates in makes clarity hard to hold on to. And instead of leaning into what was real, she defaulted to what felt safer, which was keeping her options open, staying unattached, staying in a space where she didn't have to fully commit to anything. And you can't compete with that, not because you're not enough, but because you're trying to build something real in an environment that consistently rewards the opposite of real. An environment that rewards novelty over depth, excitement over consistency, options over commitment. And the men who do everything right, the men who are genuine and consistent and actually present, are often the ones who feel this most acutely, because they're offering exactly what the environment is training people to undervalue. So what do you actually do with all of this? The first thing, and maybe the most important thing, is to stop making her loss of interest mean something about your worth, because that's where most men go wrong after something like this. They take the outcome and use it as evidence. Evidence that they're not enough, evidence that effort doesn't work, evidence that being genuine is somehow a flaw. But the outcome doesn't tell you that. The outcome tells you that this particular situation, with this particular person, at this particular time, didn't align. That's it, that's the whole story. Everything else you add to it is a narrative you're choosing, and that narrative will shape how you show up in everything that comes after. If you decide that what happened means you need to be colder, more distant, less genuine, you're not protecting yourself. You're just becoming someone who can't connect deeply, and that's a much bigger loss than any single relationship ending. The second thing is to understand the difference between effort and investment. Effort is what you do. Investment is where your emotional state lives. You can be present and consistent without making someone the center of your stability. You can show genuine interest without attaching your mood to their responses. You can care about how something develops without needing it to go a specific way in order to feel okay. That distinction is subtle, but it changes everything. Because when your inner stability isn't dependent on what she does, the dynamic shifts. You're no longer carrying that invisible weight of needing things to work out. And without that weight, the interaction breathes differently. It stays lighter. It stays more natural. And that naturalness is what actually allows something real to grow. The third thing is to stop trying to read early interest as confirmation. Early interest is not a contract. It's not a promise. It's not evidence that something is definitely going somewhere. Early interest is just early interest. It tells you that there's something worth exploring, nothing more. When you treat early interest as confirmation, you start building in your head before anything has been built in reality. You start feeling ownership over something that doesn't belong to you yet. And that internal building, that premature attachment, is what makes the eventual fade so painful. You're not just losing someone, you're losing the version of the future you'd already started constructing. If you can hold early stages lightly, if you can stay genuinely curious without becoming invested in a specific outcome, you protect yourself from the worst of this. And you stay in the kind of energy that's actually attractive to be around. There's something else worth sitting with, and it's this. The version of you that does everything right, that's consistent, that's honest, that's genuinely present, that version of you is not the problem. The problem is often that version of you showing up in the wrong place, at the wrong time, for someone who wasn't equipped to receive it. And that's not a reason to become a different person. That's a reason to become more selective about where you put that version of yourself. Because not every person who shows interest deserves access to your depth. Not every connection that feels promising is actually promising, and learning to observe people over time, rather than immediately opening everything up, is not coldness, it's wisdom. Real people, people who are actually in a place to build something, will show you that over time. They won't just show interest at the beginning, they'll maintain it. They'll be consistent not just when it's easy, but when it requires something from them. They'll match your energy without you having to ask, and they won't make you feel like you're constantly filling a gap that never closes. Those people exist. They're just not common in an environment that rewards the opposite of everything they represent, and finding them requires patience. Not the passive patience of waiting and hopping, the active patience of building a life that's worth entering, being selective about who gets access to your time and energy, and refusing to shrink yourself or change your character just because certain situations didn't work out. Here's what most men never get told. The right relationship, the kind that actually lasts, the kind that actually adds to your life rather than draining it, doesn't start with you doing everything right. It starts with two people who are both in the right place at the right time, both ready, both willing, both capable of following through on what they feel. And you can't manufacture that. You can't effort your way into someone being ready. You can't be consistent enough to make someone stable who isn't. You can't show up fully enough to make someone choose you if they're not in a position to choose anything. What you can do is make sure you're the kind of person that, when someone who is actually ready shows up, you're ready too, not desperate, not guarded to the point of being closed. but genuinely ready, stable enough in yourself that you don't need it to work, secure enough that you're not attaching to every promising beginning as if it's the last one. And the thing about reaching that place is that it doesn't happen through relationships. It happens through the work you do on yourself in the spaces between them, through building something in your own life that makes you feel complete regardless of whether someone is next to you, through developing the kind of self-assurance that isn't built on how others respond to you. Because when you operate from that place, everything shifts. The way you carry yourself changes. The way you enter situations changes. The energy you bring to early interactions changes. And that energy, the energy of someone who genuinely doesn't need this to work out in order to be okay, is the most naturally attractive thing a person can carry. Not because it's a strategy, not because it's calculated, but because it's real. And real is what most people are quietly starving for. So if you're sitting with the memory of something that faded, something you did everything right in and still lost, here's what I want you to take from this. You were not wrong to be genuine. You were not wrong to be consistent. You were not wrong to care. Those things are not flaws. In a world that increasingly treats depth like a weakness, those things are rare. And rare things belong in rare places with rare people at the right time. The situations that didn't work out were not evidence against you. They were filters. They showed you who wasn't ready. They showed you where there wasn't alignment. And every time something falls apart, as painful as that is, it clears space for something that actually fits. The answer is not to stop caring. The answer is not to become someone who plays games or manufactures distance or treats people like variables in a strategy. The answer is to keep everything you are but carry it more selectively. To stop handing your depth to every situation that shows early promise. To give things time to prove themselves before you invest everything you have. Because the right person won't need you to chase. They won't need you to perform. They won't fade when you show up consistently. They will stay. And their staying will feel different from anything you've experienced before. Not because of grand gestures or perfect moments, but because of something much simpler and much rarer. It will feel stable, and stable in an unstable world is everything. If this resonated with you, drop a comment below. I read all of them. And if you know someone who needed to hear this today, share it with them. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.